The blizzard shrieked across the endless white expanse, its icy claws piercing through every layer of protection with merciless precision. This wasn't merely cold, it was the kind of bone-deep freeze that could steal consciousness from your mind and turn living flesh into crystallized death within mere moments. Kira was barely surviving. The young girl clutched her mother's motionless form, her tiny fingers digging into the rigid, frost-coated fabric of Maya's jacket. Her body trembled uncontrollably, though, whether from terror or the encroaching embrace of hypothermia, she could no longer distinguish. The snow accumulated around them, consuming their footprints, erasing any evidence that they had ever walked this forsaken earth. Soon it would erase them entirely. She pressed her forehead against her mother's shoulder, desperately willing her to respond. Please, please, please. Her tears traced down her cheeks, crystallizing almost instantly against her pale blue skin. The stinging pain of them barely registered anymore. Her mother had stopped responding to her calls minutes ago, perhaps longer. Kira had lost all sense of time in this endless tempest. She whimpered, curling inward, trying to burrow into whatever warmth remained in her mother's unresponsive body. Maya had promised they would survive. She had promised they would find sanctuary, that they would escape. The soldiers had come at sunrise, armed and relentless, their voices sharp with commands in a dialect Kira barely comprehended. Her mother had seized her hand, whispered a single word, "Run." They had fled through the jagged ice formations, through the thin atmosphere that scorched their lungs, through exhaustion, fear, and the crushing realization that they had nowhere left to retreat. And now there was only this. The wind howled louder, and Kira squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't want to perish here. Then, through the storm, a silhouette moved. She almost dismissed it as hallucination, a cruel deception of her freezing mind. But then it drew closer, a massive shadow against the swirling snow, tall and broad, wrapped in heavy, unfamiliar armor. A stranger. Kira stiffened, her small fingers curling into her mother's sleeve. Her breath came in short, rapid gasps, her heart pounding against her ribs. Had they found them? Had the pursuit finally caught up? The figure halted several feet away, standing motionless as if evaluating the scene before him. He raised a hand and pressed something on his helmet. With a soft hiss, the visor retracted, revealing a human face. Kira froze, too terrified to even breathe. She had never seen one so close before. Humans were dangerous, that was what her mother had always taught her. Wild, unpredictable creatures, brutal and unrelenting, leaving devastation in their wake. The elders spoke of them in hushed, weary voices. Their ways were strange, unnatural. They didn't follow the natural order of things. Kira had believed those stories, but this human, he didn't look like a monster. His face was weathered, lined with exhaustion and something else she didn't quite understand. His dark eyes flickered between her and her mother, sharp and assessing, not cruel, not cold, but searching. Then he moved. Kira flinched, instincts screaming at her to run, fight, do something, but her limbs refused to obey. He crouched beside them, reaching out, and for one agonizing moment she thought he was going to seize her, snatch her up like the soldiers in the dark uniforms had tried to do. Instead, his gloved fingers barely brushed against her mother's throat. His jaw tightened. She's still breathing. His voice was rough, deep, almost lost in the wind. Kira's chest ached. She wanted to believe him. But what if it was a trick? "I can help," he said. She didn't understand why those words made something inside her crack. Her hands trembled as she clutched her mother's sleeve, torn between everything she had been taught and the desperate, instinctive need for anyone to save them. The human's gaze flickered to her, meeting her wide, tear-filled eyes. His expression shifted, something like understanding flashing across his face. He hesitated, then did something Kira hadn't expected. He pulled off his glove. The wind bit into his skin immediately, turning his fingers red, but he didn't flinch. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and offered her his hand. Not a demand, not a command, a choice. Kira stared at it, her own small hands curled into fists against her chest. Every instinct screamed at her to be wary, to hold back, to never trust a human. But beneath the fear, something else whispered he didn't have to stop. He didn't have to kneel in the snow. He didn't have to reach out at all. Her breath shuddered. Her mother had told her to be brave. Tears slipping silently down her cheeks, Kira reached out, hesitant, barely touching his fingers at first. His skin was warm despite the cold, rough, solid, real. The man let out a slow breath. Then, with steady, careful movements, he scooped Maya, into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He shifted her against his chest, securing her as best he could, then turned back to Kira. "Come on, kid." His voice was quieter now, like he knew how fragile she felt. "We need to get out of here." Kira hesitated only a moment longer. Then she grabbed the edge of his coat, holding on tight. The man nodded once, his grip firm around Maya. He turned, walking forward into the storm, his powerful strides cutting through the snow like it was nothing. Kira followed. The storm raged around them, but she no longer felt like she was being swallowed whole. And for the first time in her life, she wondered maybe the stories were wrong. The storm had not relented. If anything, it had grown fiercer, clawing at them with icy talons, howling in frustration as if enraged that its prey was slipping away. The human Marcus moved steadily, his strides unwavering despite the snow rising past his knees. He carried Maya against his chest with an ease that seemed impossible, as if her weight meant nothing to him. Kira clung to his coat, her small hands grasping the heavy, unfamiliar fabric like a lifeline. She didn't know where they were going. She wasn't even sure this man knew. But he moved with purpose, like someone who had already decided they were going to survive. That was something at least. Her feet ached, half numb from cold, but she kept moving, not because she trusted him not yet, but because stopping meant dying. And even though she didn't understand this human, she knew with certainty that he was her only chance. The wind shrieked once more before they finally broke through the worst of the storm. A dark shape loomed ahead, an outpost, partially buried in the ice, its entrance a reinforced metal hatch barely visible against the landscape. Marcus shifted Maya in his arms and reached for a device on his wrist. A moment later, the door hissed open, flooding the snow with dim artificial light. The heat inside hit Kira like a physical blow. Her skin burned as warmth tried to chase the frost from her body, her lungs stinging as she inhaled air that wasn't freezing. For the first time in hours, Marcus stepped inside, and the door sealed shut behind them with a finality that made her shiver. The sudden silence was overwhelming. The howling wind was gone, replaced by a dull hum of machinery, the quiet hum of heaters working against the cold. Marcus moved quickly, laying Maya down on a cot in the corner of the small shelter. He peeled back the layers of ice-stiffened fabric around her, checking her breathing, pressing gloved fingers against the side of her neck. His expression darkened. Kira stood frozen by the door, barely breathing, her body rigid with uncertainty. Her mind screamed at her to do something, but she didn't know what. She was too young to understand injuries, too small to lift her mother, too afraid to make a mistake that might cost her everything. She hated feeling useless. Marcus's voice cut through the panic, threatening to rise in her chest. "She's cold, too cold." Kira clenched her fists. Of course she was cold. They had been in the storm for hours. Did this human think she didn't know that? But Marcus wasn't looking at her with pity or dismissal. He was focused, assessing the situation with an intensity that made her feel like he cared not just about whether her mother lived or died, but about the fact that this mattered to Kira. That, more than anything, made her hesitate. Humans weren't supposed to care. Marcus pulled a blanket from his storage compartment and draped it over Maya. Then, without looking up, he spoke again. "You should sit." Kira stiffened. "You're freezing," he added, voice softer, but no less firm. "And you're not going to be any help to her if you collapse." Kira glared at him, unwilling to admit that her legs were trembling beneath her, that her hands were so numb she could barely feel them. She didn't want to sit. She didn't want to rest. She wanted her mother to wake up. She wanted to understand why this was happening. She wanted to go home, but home was gone. The weight of that truth settled over her like ice. Slowly, reluctantly, she lowered herself onto the floor beside the cot. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them, watching. Marcus was careful as he worked. His movements were efficient, precise, not rushed, but not slow either. He pulled a small device from his belt and pressed it against Maya's neck. A quiet beep filled the room. He frowned. "Her body temperature is too low. We need to get it up, or she's not going to wake up." Kira tensed. "What are you going to do?" Marcus hesitated, as if considering how to phrase his answer. "Heat packs. For now." He pulled several from his bag and activated them, tucking them gently beneath the blanket covering Maya. "It'll help, but it's not enough." Kira's heart pounded. "Then what?" Marcus exhaled through his nose, thinking, calculating. "I'll figure it out." Kira clenched her fists tighter. That wasn't an answer. That wasn't something she could hold on to. But what choice did she have? Marcus rose to his feet, running a hand through his dark, slightly damp hair. He was watching Maya closely, his sharp gaze flickering between her shallow breaths and the slow rise and fall of her chest. Kira didn't know what to make of him. She had spent her whole life hearing about humans, how they were reckless, how they only thought about themselves, how they were built for destruction. But this man had carried her mother through a storm. He had brought them here. He was trying. That didn't make sense. She didn't trust him, not yet, maybe not ever, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen. Minutes passed in silence. Then, at last, her mother stirred. Kira was on her feet before she realized she had moved. "Mama?" Maya didn't open her eyes, but a faint, barely audible sound slipped from her lips. Her fingers twitched. The tension in Marcus's shoulders eased slightly. "She's stable for now," he turned, finally looking at Kira directly. "She needs rest. You do too." Kira didn't argue, couldn't. Her body betrayed her, exhaustion creeping in now that the immediate danger had passed. The warmth of the shelter made her limbs feel heavier, her eyelids drooping. Marcus reached behind him and pulled another blanket from his pack. He didn't hand it to her, just draped it over her shoulders without a word. Kira flinched. The fabric was warm to warm after hours in the cold, but she didn't shake it off. She shouldn't have accepted it, shouldn't have let this human do anything for her. But as she curled up beside her mother's cot, her small hands gripping the edge of the blanket, she didn't push him away. Marcus didn't say anything else. He just sat down across the room, leaning back against the wall, arms crossed, watching over them. Kira's last thought before sleep pulled her under was quiet, uncertain. Maybe, just maybe, humans weren't what she had been told. Marcus had spent too many years surviving to ignore the signs of a hunt. The way the wind carried an unnatural stillness. The way his gut twisted with that instinctive warning before danger struck. He had learned to listen, but he didn't need instinct alone this time. The console's blinking red markers were all the confirmation he needed. They weren't just being followed. They were being hunted. He exhaled through his nose, quiet but deliberate, forcing his breathing to stay slow and even. It hadn't been difficult to figure out. The girl had said little, barely speaking beyond answering his immediate questions. But he had seen the terror in her eyes. That kind of fear wasn't born from the cold. It wasn't just from being lost in a storm. It came from being prey, and the way she had reacted when he told her they had company, that single whispered word, them had told him everything he needed to know. Kira and her mother weren't just lost. They were running from something. He didn't know the whole story, not yet, but what he did know was this. Whoever was chasing them was still coming. Marcus's grip tightened around his rifle as he turned away from the console, scanning the small shelter. Maya was still unconscious, her breathing steadier now, but her face still pale, her dark hair damp with lingering cold. She wasn't in any shape to run. That complicated things. Kira was watching him, barely moving, her small frame stiff with tension. Her wide violet eyes flicked between him and the sealed entrance, and Marcus could see the battle playing out inside her head. She didn't trust him, not completely, but she was starting to. He crouched in front of her, keeping his voice steady. "Low, they were after you before you got caught in that storm." It wasn't a question. Kira hesitated, her fingers curling around the edges of the blanket still draped over her shoulders. "Why?" Marcus pressed. She swallowed, her throat bobbing. For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer, but then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "Because we ran away." Marcus nodded slowly, his mind piecing things together. He had figured as much, but that didn't tell him why. From what? Kira's small hands clenched into fists. She was silent for a long moment before answering, her voice shaking but determined. "From them. The Empire." Marcus felt something cold settle in his gut. The Empire. He had dealt with their kind before, officers, enforcers, the kind of people who didn't just hunt you down but erased you from existence when they finally caught you. Ruthless, organized, and thorough. If they wanted someone dead, that person usually didn't get another chance. Marcus kept his expression neutral. He didn't need Kira seeing the concern creeping into his mind. "Why are they after you?" he asked. Kira bit her lip. She looked at her mother, still motionless, as if waiting for her to wake up and take this burden from her. When Maya didn't move, Kira drew in a shaky breath. "Because of my mother," she admitted. "She used to work for them." Marcus frowned. "Used to?" Kira nodded. "She left. She said they were doing bad things. She wanted to stop them. Of course. That explained everything. Someone high-ranking enough to know what the Empire was really doing, and then trying to leave that was a death sentence. Marcus exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down his face. So Maya was a defector, a fugitive. That meant the Empire wouldn't stop. They wouldn't lose her in a storm and assume she had died. They would keep searching until they found the body, which meant they were going to keep coming. Marcus shifted, glancing back at the console. The motion markers were closer now. How long have they been chasing you? He asked. Days, Kira murmured. She rubbed her arms, suddenly looking smaller. We had a ship, but they found us. We barely got out. We've been running since. Marcus nodded, filing away that information. If their ship had been compromised, then the Empire had likely tracked its last coordinates right to this planet. And your father? He asked carefully. Kira shook her head. They killed him. A beat of silence. Marcus didn't press. He didn't need to. The pain in her voice told him everything. Kira's arms wrapped around herself, but her gaze didn't waver. She was afraid, of course she was, but there was something else in her expression now. Determination. Even if she was just a child, she understood what was happening. She wasn't naive enough to think they could hide forever. Marcus exhaled sharply, rising to his feet. All right, that's enough for now. We need to move. Kira looked at her mother again. She's not strong enough. She doesn't have to be. Marcus cut in. I'll carry her. You just stay close. Kira hesitated, then nodded. Marcus didn't waste time. He grabbed his gear, secured his rifle over his shoulder, and moved to lift Maya. She barely stirred as he adjusted her weight against his chest. Let's go. Kira followed, her small footsteps barely making a sound, as Marcus led them toward the back of the shelter, where the maintenance hatch waited. The console let out a sharp beep. Marcus turned his head sharply, eyes narrowing at the screen. The motion markers had closed into fast. He tensed. They're already here. No more time. He hit the hatch's release, and the door hissed open, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel beneath. The structure. The air inside was stale, heavy with damp ice and a faint metallic tang of old mining equipment. Kira hesitated. Marcus didn't. He stepped inside, shifting Maya against him, then reached out. Come on. Kira's small hand gripped his sleeve. She stepped into the tunnel, and Marcus sealed the hatch behind them. Darkness swallowed them. Above, a metallic clang echoed through the shelter as the Empire soldiers breached the entrance. Kira stiffened, pressing close to Marcus. He could feel her shaking, but she didn't make a sound. Good girl. Marcus clicked on his rifle's light, casting a narrow beam through the tunnel's depths. Stay quiet, he murmured, and stay close. Kira nodded. Then, without another word, Marcus started moving. Behind them, the hunt had begun. Marcus's mind worked fast to fast. Years of instinct, honed on battlefields and backwater planets, told him exactly how this would play out. If they didn't move, if they hesitated, the Empire wouldn't just storm the shelter. They would tear it apart, room by room, sector by sector, until nothing remained. A locked hatch wouldn't stop them. Walls wouldn't stop them. The only option was to disappear. His grip tightened around Maya's unconscious body as his free hand moved toward the maintenance hatch at the back of the shelter. It was an old mining shaft, unstable, freezing, and barely functional, but it was an exit. It was their only exit. Kira stood frozen, her violet eyes wide with fear. Marcus didn't have time to explain, to comfort her. He needed her to move. Kira, his voice was steady but firm. We can't stay here. Do you understand? She blinked at him, her small hands gripping the edges of the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. She was terrified, but there was something else beneath it, something sharp, something that knew exactly what would happen if they stayed. She nodded. Marcus exhaled, pressing the hatch's release panel. The lock disengaged with a soft hiss, revealing a black, gaping void beneath them. A rush of cold air seeped in, sharp and biting, carrying the scent of damp metal and stale oxygen. Kira hesitated. Come on, kid. Marcus crouched down, adjusting Maya's weight against him. I need you to go first. I'll be right behind you. Kira looked at the tunnel's entrance, then back at him. Her entire life, she had been told not to trust humans. But Marcus had carried her mother through a storm. He had given her warmth, given her a chance. She swallowed hard and stepped forward. Marcus watched as she lowered herself into the tunnel, small hands gripping the frozen ladder rungs. He waited until she was several steps down before following, shifting Maya carefully as he climbed. Above them, the console let out a sharp beep. Marcus's heart pounded. The Empire had breached the outer doors. They were out of time. As soon as he was inside, he reached up and hit the panel beside the hatch. The metal door slid shut, cutting off the dim glow of the shelter above, sealing them inside the darkness. For a moment, everything was silent. The tunnel stretched ahead, a narrow corridor of ice-coated walls and rusted metal supports. The cold was relentless, creeping through Marcus's gear, biting at his exposed skin. Kira flinched at the sound, her fingers tightening in the fabric of Marcus's jacket. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. Marcus could feel the weight of her fear, as if it were his own. "We're almost clear," he murmured, keeping his voice low but firm. "Just a little further." She nodded, though her expression remained tense. Marcus could hear the subtle shifts in the air, the way sound carried through the tunnels. If the Empire had a tracker with them, it was only a matter of time before they picked up their trail. They needed to disappear. A faint tremor ran through Maya's body, barely perceptible, but Marcus felt it. It was the first sign of movement from her since they had left the shelter. "Kira," he said quietly, his voice calm but intent. "Talk to her. Keep her with us." Kira blinked up at him, hope flickering in her expression. She let go of his coat and moved closer, reaching for her mother's hand. "Mama." The word was so small, so fragile, that for a moment Marcus wasn't sure Maya would respond. Then a breath, a slow and steady inhale, and her fingers twitched. Kira sucked in a sharp breath. "She's waking up." Marcus didn't slow down, but his grip on Maya shifted slightly, adjusting her weight. He could feel the faint tension in her muscles now, the slow return of consciousness. "Maya," he said, his voice steady. "You with us?" A weak sound, barely more than a whisper. Then, finally, her eyes opened. For a moment, she was unfocused, disoriented. The dim light of the tunnel reflected in her dark, glassy eyes, confusion flickering across her face. She was still too weak to move, but her gaze shifted, searching, finding Kira. Kira let out a small, choked sound, half a sob, half a breath of relief. "Mama, you're okay." Marcus felt the moment Maya registered where she was. Her body tensed slightly, instinct preparing her to fight or flee. "Easy," Marcus murmured, his grip adjusting just enough to remind her that he was still carrying her. "You're safe, for now." Her gaze snapped to him then, her dark eyes sharpening despite the haze of exhaustion. Marcus met her stare without hesitation. She didn't speak, but he could see it, the immediate calculation, the silent demand for answers. "Who are you? Where are we? What happened?" Kira answered first. "He saved us, Mama. He carried you through the storm." Maya's expression didn't soften, but something in her gaze shifted. "Recognition. You kept us alive," she murmured, her voice weak. Marcus shrugged slightly, adjusting his grip on her as he kept moving. "Didn't feel like letting you freeze to death." There was a pause. Then, so faint Marcus almost missed it, a ghost of a smile flickered across her lips. But it was gone in an instant. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice stronger now. "Underground," Marcus answered. "Old mining tunnels. We got about another minute before the Empire realizes we're not topside anymore." Maya's breath caught slightly, her body tensing. "They followed us. Did you think they wouldn't?" Marcus shot her a sharp look. "They want you dead. They're not going to just walk away." Maya closed her eyes briefly, exhaling. "Then we need to keep moving." That was the plan. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the danger, the fact that she was still barely conscious, Maya shifted, trying to pull herself upright. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" "Walking," she muttered, though her voice lacked conviction. Marcus snorted. "Not a chance." Maya glared at him, a real glare, not hazy confusion, not half-conscious distress, an actual, fully aware glare. Marcus had to admit, he was impressed. "I can walk," she insisted. "Yeah? That why you're still in my arms?" Her jaw tightened. Marcus smirked. "Thought so." Kira made a small noise, almost like a giggle. Maya sighed, closing her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, there was something different in her expression. Not trust, not yet, but something close. "Fine," she muttered, "but don't get used to it." Marcus chuckled under his breath. "Wouldn't dream of it." He kept moving, Kira at his side, Maya in his arms. The tunnel stretched ahead into the dark. Behind them, the enemies searched, but for the first time since this all began, they were together. The tunnel was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of Marcus's rifle. The cold air pressed against them, thick and heavy with the weight of exhaustion. They had been running for too long. Marcus could still feel the warmth of Maya's hand on his arm from earlier. She had touched him without thinking, and he had let her. But now, as they finally stopped to catch their breath, the silence between them changed. Maya wasn't looking at him. She was watching him, studying him, and Marcus knew she had questions. "You're not just some wanderer, are you?" Her voice was quiet but sharp, cutting like a blade pressed just beneath the skin. Marcus exhaled slowly, shifting his grip on his rifle. "What makes you say that?" Maya's jaw tightened. "You don't fight like a soldier," she said. "You don't talk like one either, but you know how they move. You predicted how the Empire would track us. You knew exactly how to disappear. That's not something you just pick up traveling the galaxy." Marcus didn't answer, because she was right. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Kira, sitting a few feet away, was watching too. Small hands clenched into fists, violet eyes wide with worry. Maya's voice dropped lower. "Who are you, Marcus?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, let out a slow breath. There was no point in lying. Not to them. "I wasn't a soldier," he admitted. "Not really." Maya didn't blink. "Then what were you?" Marcus hesitated, then forced himself to say it. "I was an infiltrator." A long, cold pause. Maya's expression didn't change, but he saw the shift in her eyes. I tracked people," Marcus interrupted before she could finish. "Ran operations for the Empire. Found rebels, defectors, deserters. I didn't kill them, but I made sure someone else could." His voice was steady to steady. Kira sucked in a breath. Maya's hands curled into fists. "So you hunted people like us," Maya said quietly. Marcus felt that right in his ribs, right in the place where the guilt lived. "Yes." A heavy silence settled over them. Kira moved closer to Maya, small fingers wrapping around her mother's arm. Maya didn't push her away, didn't look away from Marcus. "Did you ever track anyone like me?" Maya asked, her voice quiet. Marcus met her gaze. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I wouldn't be surprised." The weight of his past crushed against him. He could see it now, a younger version of himself walking through Empire corridors, standing at attention as officers gave him his next target. A name, a location. He had never asked questions, not until it was too late. "Why did you leave?" Maya asked. Marcus let out a slow breath. "Because I caught the wrong person." Maya frowned. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I was sent to track a rebel. Standard mission. They said he was dangerous, wanted for attacks against Empire forces. I found him, easily followed him for weeks, tracked him to some backwater colony where he was hiding with his family." Maya's expression darkened. "His family?" Marcus nodded. "Wife, kid, a little younger than Kira." Kira's small fingers curled into Maya's coat. "That was the first time I hesitated," Marcus continued. "I had done this job for years, but I had never seen that side of it. I had never seen what happened after I made the call." He looked away. "I made the call anyway." Maya inhaled sharply. Marcus clenched his fists, and then I watched as the Empire executed him in front of his wife and son. Silence. "That was the last time I made a call," he said. "I ran after that, took whatever I could carry and disappeared. Spent the next few years hopping from system to system, staying off the grid, doing whatever it took to survive. When I found this planet, I thought I could finally stop running." A humorless chuckle left his lips. "Guess that was a stupid idea." The silence stretched, heavy with something Marcus couldn't name. Then Maya moved, not to hit him, not to shove him away. She just sat down beside him. Kira watched her mother carefully, then crawled over to Marcus and sat down too. Marcus blinked. "You saved us," Maya said. "That matters." Marcus huffed a small, bitter laugh. "Not enough." "Maybe not," Maya agreed. "But if you were still that man, you wouldn't be here." Marcus turned to her, then, really looking at her. Maya met his gaze. "You saved us. You could have turned us in, could have walked away at any time." Kira, small and quiet, nodded. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "So what are you now?" Maya asked. Marcus exhaled. "I don't know," he admitted. Maya studied him for a long moment. Then finally, she gave a small nod. "Then figure it out," she said. "But do it with us." Marcus swallowed past the sudden tightness in his chest. Kira, still curled up beside him, grabbed his hand in both of hers. "Okay," Marcus murmured. Maya nodded once, standing up. Come on, she said, offering him a hand. We still have a war to survive. Marcus stared at her for a second, then, with a slow, careful movement, he took her hand. She pulled him to his feet, steadying him as he swayed slightly. One step at a time, Maya murmured. Marcus let out a breath and smirked. You're getting sentimental on me, sweetheart. Maya rolled her eyes. Shut up and start walking. Marcus chuckled, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running anymore. Marcus's breathing was slow but steady, even as pain flared through his side. The wound wasn't fatal, he had taken worse, but he could feel the warmth of blood seeping into his shirt, the dull ache settling deep into his muscles. He had saved Maya. That was all that mattered. Maya's hands pressed against the wound, her fingers coated in his blood. Her dark eyes burned with something fierce, something raw. You're an idiot, she muttered, her voice shaking just enough to betray her emotions. Marcus smirked despite himself. I get that a lot. That's not funny. A little funny. Maya let out a slow breath, her jaw tightening as she worked to slow the bleeding. Kira hovered beside them, her small hands gripping Marcus's sleeve, her violet eyes wide and desperate. Is he going to die? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Marcus reached out, ruffling her dark hair with blood-stained fingers. Not today, kid. Kira let out a shaky breath, clinging to his arm a little tighter. Maya wasn't convinced. Her hands moved quickly, expertly, securing a piece of fabric around his side. He felt the pressure tighten, the pain sharp but necessary. She had done this before, not just battlefield wounds. This kind of wound, a gunshot. She had seen people die like this before. Marcus watched her as she worked, his gaze steady. You know, you could just admit you're worried about me. She didn't look up. You could just stop making me worry. Marcus chuckled, a mistake. The movement sent a sharp jolt of pain through his ribs, and Maya pressed harder on the wound in retaliation. You're lucky I don't have a knife in my hand, she muttered. I'd still be charming. Marcus countered. Maya glared at him, but there was no real heat behind it. Just exhaustion, just frustration, just fear. Marcus hated seeing that in her eyes. We need to move, she said finally. That shot, they'll have heard it. She was right. Even now, the tunnel was too quiet, the silence pressing in around them like a living thing. The Empire soldiers wouldn't stop, not until they had what they came for. Marcus forced himself to his feet. Maya caught his arm before he could sway, steadying him without a word. He didn't push her away. Are you sure you can run? She asked, eyeing him warily. Nope, Marcus admitted. But I'll do it anyway. Maya rolled her eyes, but she still had a hand on his arm as they moved. Kira was at his other side, keeping close. Marcus didn't miss the way Maya's fingers lingered, longer than necessary. Didn't miss the way she didn't let go. They kept moving deeper into the tunnels, searching for an exit, a real one this time. The icy walls stretched endlessly ahead, and Marcus felt the exhaustion creeping into his bones. He was slowing down. Maya noticed. We need to stop, she said. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. You're bleeding, Marcus. We don't have time. Maya stepped in front of him, forcing him to stop. She was close to close. You don't get to decide everything alone, she said, voice quiet but firm. Marcus exhaled through his nose. He glanced at Kira, who looked between them with wide, worried eyes. He looked back at Maya. She was right. He knew she was right. But stopping meant thinking, meant feeling, and Marcus had spent too long running from both. Maya's gaze softened slightly. Just for a minute, she murmured. Marcus didn't argue this time. They found a small alcove in the tunnel, a collapsed section of the mine where the ice had created a natural barrier, offering a few precious moments of safety. Marcus sat down heavily, leaning against the frozen wall, letting out a slow breath. Maya knelt beside him, checking the wound again, her hands steady despite the tension in her jaw. Kira curled up beside them, watching with quiet intensity. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of their breathing, the distant drip of melting ice. Maya's hands lingered against his skin longer than necessary. Marcus noticed. She did too. Her fingers hesitated just for a second before pulling away, but Marcus caught her wrist before she could. She blinked, startled. You don't have to be afraid of this, Marcus said quietly. Maya swallowed, didn't look at him. I'm not afraid. Marcus tilted his head. Liar. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't pull away. Kira shifted beside them, watching the exchange like she knew something was happening but didn't quite understand what. Marcus exhaled slowly. "You and Kira," he said after a moment. "What's your plan if we get out of here?" Maya hesitated. "I don't know," she admitted. Marcus nodded. He had figured as much. Because nowhere was safe, not really. The Empire didn't just let things go. Maya met his gaze. "You could leave us, you know." Marcus's grip on her wrist tightened slightly, not enough to hurt, just enough for her to feel it. "I could," he agreed. A pause. "But I won't." Maya swallowed, her breath unsteady. "Why?" Marcus knew why. And for the first time, he said it out loud. "Because I don't want to lose you." The words hung between them, heavy, irreversible. Maya let out a slow, shaky breath. Her fingers curled around his. Kira watched quietly, eyes wide, but she wasn't afraid anymore. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't want to lose you either." Marcus let out a breath. He didn't realize he had been holding. And for the first time since this all began, since the storm, since the chase, since the fight for survival, it felt like something had changed. Something real, something that mattered. And for the first time in years, Marcus wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting for them, for her. And he wasn't going to lose. Marcus could still feel the weight of Maya's hand on his. Even after she pulled away, even after she turned her attention back to Kira, checking her daughter over for any signs of injury. The warmth lingered. It was grounding, solid, a reminder that for the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone, but the moment couldn't last. The Empire was still out there. He forced himself to stand, gritting his teeth as pain flared in his side. Maya noticed immediately, her sharp gaze flickering to him. "You need rest, not an option," Marcus muttered, shouldering his rifle. "There, still hunting us." Kira pressed herself closer to her mother, her small hands gripping Maya's sleeve. She knew it, too knew that if the Empire was willing to chase them this far, they wouldn't stop. Maya let out a slow breath. "Then we move." Marcus nodded. They pushed forward, deeper into the tunnel system. The air grew colder with every step, the ice-covered walls glowing faintly in the dim light of their weapons. The frost reflected in jagged shards. The tunnels had been abandoned for years, but now they felt suffocating, as if the very walls were waiting for them to collapse. Marcus knew they couldn't keep running forever. "There's got to be a way out of this," Maya murmured. Marcus scanned the passage ahead. "There is." Maya arched a brow, and he glanced at her, his lips twitching into something almost resembling a smirk. "We just have to survive long enough to find it." Maya rolled her eyes, but there was something softer beneath her exasperation. Marcus liked that look. They walked in silence for a few more minutes, the tension thick between them. Every sound was amplified in the stillness, the distant drip of melting ice, the quiet rustle of fabric as Kira adjusted her blanket, the faint hum of Marcus's rifle as he kept it ready. Then the tunnel shifted. Marcus felt it before he heard it, the ground beneath him trembling ever so slightly, the faintest pressure change in the air. Something was coming. "Get down," he snapped, shoving Maya and Kira toward the cover of a broken mining rig. Maya pulled Kira close, her body already shielding the girl. Marcus turned, his rifle snapping into position just as the first explosion hit. A shock waved her through the tunnel, sending chunks of ice and metal flying. The walls shook, dust and frost filling the air in thick, suffocating clouds. Marcus moved before he could think, dropping to his knee and firing into the chaos. Figures emerged from the smoke. Empire soldiers. Marcus took down the first pair. With precise shots, their bodies crumpling against the frozen floor. But there were more. Too many. Maya fired from behind cover, her aim sharp despite her exhaustion. Kira curled against the metal, hands over her ears, her small frame trembling. Marcus gritted his teeth. They had to get out, now. "We're pinned," Maya shouted over the chaos. "Not for long," Marcus growled. He pulled a small device from his belt to charge. The tunnel was already unstable. One well-placed blast would bring it down, but that meant cutting off their own exit. "You're not," Maya started. Marcus flicked the detonator. "Close your eyes, sweetheart." The explosion roared. A wall of ice and rock collapsed between them and the Empire forces, sealing off the tunnel in a thunderous crash. Silence followed. Then Kira sobbed. Maya turned instantly, pulling her daughter into her arms, whispering soft reassurances. Marcus stood slowly, exhaling. The pain in his side was worse now, but it didn't matter. They were alive. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, before he could react, she was in front of him. And she kissed him. It wasn't careful. It wasn't hesitant. It was desperate, fierce, real. Marcus's breath caught. He had faced death 100 times, walked through fire, fought through hell, but this broke him. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, his lips pressing back with equal intensity. He wasn't thinking, wasn't questioning. He was just feeling, because for the first time in years, he had something worth fighting for. For the first time in his life, he had something worth staying for. Maya pulled back just enough to look at him. "If you do something that reckless again," she whispered, her forehead resting against his, "I will kill you myself." Marcus chuckled, still breathless. "Noted." Kira sniffled, wiping at her tears. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Marcus and Maya both froze. Then they laughed. And just like that, the fear didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. The air in the tunnels was getting thinner. Marcus could feel it in the way his breaths came just a little too sharp, a little too fast. The collapse had bought them time, but it had also sealed them in. If they didn't find a way out soon, they wouldn't have to worry about the Empire killing them. The tunnels would do the job first. Kira clung to Maya's side, her violet eyes darting nervously across the jagged ice walls. The fear was still there, just beneath the surface, but she wasn't crying anymore. She had survived too much for that. Marcus glanced at Maya. She was watching him, waiting, trusting. "This way," he said, motioning for them to follow. They moved quickly, deeper into the mine. Marcus had spent enough time in places like this to know there had to be an exit somewhere. Miners didn't just dig their way into death traps without a way out, and sure enough, after a few more minutes of navigating the twisting tunnels, they found it a massive hangar bay. The ice-covered chamber stretched high above them, ancient metal supports groaning under the weight of centuries of frost, and there, buried beneath layers of ice and dust, sat their salvation, an old Empire transport ship. Marcus let out a slow breath. "Well, that's convenient." Maya didn't smile. "Can you fly it? If it still works?" Kira's head tilted. "It looks broken." She wasn't wrong. The ship's hull was scarred, and the engines were covered in frost. But Marcus wasn't concerned about appearances. What mattered was whether it had power. "Stay here," he muttered, moving toward the ship. Maya grabbed his wrist before he could go too far. Her fingers were warm, solid. "Be careful." Marcus smirked. "Always am." Her deadpan stare said she clearly didn't believe that. He climbed up the frozen ramp and stepped into the cockpit, brushing frost off the control panel. The moment of truth. He flipped a switch. Nothing. Marcus exhaled. "All right, you stubborn piece of junk. Let's try that again." He rerouted the emergency power, bypassing the main ignition. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. A deep, low hum filled the air. Marcus grinned. "Now we're talking." He moved quickly, running a systems check. Engines at 40%. Shields non-functional. Weapons completely dead. "Not ideal," he muttered, "but it would fly." And that was all that mattered. He jogged back to the hangar entrance. "We're in business." Maya didn't hesitate. She grabbed Kira's hand and started toward the ship. But before they could reach the ramp, a shot rang out. The blast slammed into the metal near Marcus's feet, sending sparks flying. He whirled around, rifle already raised. Empire soldiers. They had found them, and leading them, stepping through the fog of ice and dust, was a man Marcus knew. His stomach twisted. Commander Thorn. Tall, imposing, with a face like carved stone and eyes that had once ordered Marcus to kill without hesitation. "Marcus." Thorn's voice was smooth, unbothered. "I should have known it was you." Marcus kept his rifle steady. "And I should have known the Empire wouldn't give up." Thorn smirked. "You know how this works. You're harboring fugitives. Surrender them now, and I might let you live." Kira let out a small, frightened sound. Maya immediately pulled her behind her, stepping between her daughter and the soldiers. Marcus's grip tightened on his rifle. "No, not this time. You always did like giving me bad options," Marcus said, voice cool. Thorn's smirk didn't fade. "And you always did have a bad habit of making stupid choices." He lifted his hand. His men raised their weapons. Marcus acted first. He dove for cover, rolling behind a stack of crates as blaster fire lit up the hangar. "Move," he barked. Maya grabbed Kira and sprinted toward the ship as Marcus fired back, his shots precise, controlled. 2 soldiers dropped before they even had time to react. But there were too many. Maya reached the ramp, shoving Kira inside before turning back. Her pistol snapped up, firing a clean shot into the shoulder of the nearest soldier. Marcus felt a sharp jolt of pride, then pain. A shot clipped his already injured side, sending him stumbling. He hissed, biting back the pain. Not now, Thorn advanced, slow and deliberate. You were always one of my best, Marcus, he mused. Shame you wasted your potential, Marcus gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright. Yeah, well, I like to think I'm finally putting it to good use. Thorn fired. Marcus dodged barely. The shot scorched past his shoulder. He aimed, finger tightening on the trigger, and then Thorn was suddenly thrown backward. Maya stood at the top of the ship's ramp, her pistol still smoking. Marcus blinked, then grinned. Remind me never to piss you off, he called. Maya huffed. Get in the damn ship. Marcus didn't argue. He bolted up the ramp just as the remaining soldiers regrouped. Blaster fire rained against the hull as he stumbled into the cockpit. Maya right behind him. Kira was already in the co-pilot's chair, hands hovering over the controls. Can we fly? She asked. Marcus grinned. Let's find out. He slammed the ignition. The ship roared to life. The engines sputtered, coughed, but held. Outside, the Empire soldiers scrambled, shouting into comms, calling for reinforcements. Too late, Marcus punched the thrusters. The ship lurched, breaking free of the frozen hangar, blasting upward through the tunnels, ripping toward the sky. The hull rattled, the frame groaning under the pressure as they broke through the planet's atmosphere. Kira let out a breathless laugh. Maya slumped into the co-pilot's seat, her eyes locked on Marcus. You did it, she said. Marcus exhaled, adrenaline still thrumming through his veins. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was running. No, he murmured. We did. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time, they were free. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast ocean of darkness speckled with light. Marcus had seen plenty of skies before, some clear, some burning, some littered with wreckage. But this one was different, because for the first time in longer than he cared to admit, he wasn't running. The ship hummed softly around them, stabilizing. After its rough ascent, Marcus sat in the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls, but his mind was still catching up. They had done it. They had escaped. The Empire was behind them, and for the first time in weeks they could breathe. Kira sat curled up in the co-pilot's chair, her small hands gripping the edge of the console. Her violet eyes were wide, staring at the view outside with a mix of awe and disbelief. We're really gone, she whispered. Marcus glanced at her, then at Maya, who stood beside him, one hand braced against the back of his chair. Yeah, kid, he murmured. We're really gone. Kira let out a breath, and for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't the weary, hesitant smile she had worn before. This one was real. Marcus leaned back slightly, his muscles protesting the movement. The wound in his side was still there, throbbing beneath the hastily applied bandages. But it didn't matter. Maya must have noticed, because she reached down and smacked the back of his head lightly. Don't think I didn't see that, she muttered. Marcus smirked. See what? You wincing like an idiot. Pretty sure I was smirking like an idiot, Maya huffed, crossing her arms. You need rest, Marcus. Proper medical treatment. We all do. He motioned vaguely at her. You're not exactly in great shape either. She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Kira turned toward them, her small hands gripping the armrests of her chair. Where are we going? Marcus hesitated. They had a ship, they had freedom, but they still needed somewhere to land. The Empire wasn't going to forget about them anytime soon. Maya seemed to be thinking the same thing. She exhaled slowly. I might know a place. Marcus turned to her. How good of a place? Good enough that we won't be found unless we want to be. Marcus arched a brow. I'm listening. Maya took the co-pilot's seat, her fingers moving over the navigation panel. A set of coordinates appeared on the screen. It's an old resistance outpost, she explained, hidden in a system off the usual trade routes. It was abandoned years ago, but I have contacts who might still be there. People who hate the Empire as much as I do. Marcus studied the screen, considering it was risky, but then, again, so was everything they did. You trust these people? He asked. Maya met his gaze. I trust them more than I trust the alternative. Fair enough. Marcus punched in the coordinates. All right then. Let's go meet your friends. The journey took hours. Kira dozed off first, curled up in the co-pilot's chair, her breathing soft. And even. Maya eventually leaned back too, exhaustion catching up with her. Marcus didn't sleep. He never did. Instead, he kept his hands on the controls, eyes scanning the vast emptiness of space. And for the first time, he let himself think about the future. He had spent years running, surviving. He had told himself he didn't need anything else, that it was safer to be alone. But now there was Kira, sleeping without fear for the first time in weeks. There was Maya, still watching over her daughter, still standing despite everything. And there was him. Marcus exhaled slowly, shaking his head to himself. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something. Maybe, just maybe, he had finally found a reason to stop running. Outside the viewport, the distant glow of their destination appeared on the horizon. A new beginning. And for the first time in years, Marcus wanted to see where it led. The ship broke through the cloud cover, descending toward the hidden outpost nestled between the towering trees of the forest-covered moon. The air was thick with mist, the landscape vast and untouched. Unlike the frozen wasteland they had escaped, this world was alive, verdant, and quiet, with no Empire ships in sight. For the first time in weeks, Marcus's fingers relaxed against the controls. Kira pressed her face to the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. Her violet eyes were wide, filled with something Marcus hadn't seen in a long time. Wonder. It's beautiful, she whispered. Marcus smirked. It's a hell of an improvement, that's for sure. Maya stood behind them, arms crossed, but her expression was softer than usual. Relief, hope, maybe even something like peace. Take us in, she murmured. Marcus guided the ship toward the landing zone, his movements smooth despite the exhaustion weighing on his body. The engines let out a soft hum as they touched down, the ship settling into place among the trees. For a long moment, none of them moved. They had spent so long running that the stillness felt almost unnatural. Marcus finally exhaled, unbuckling his restraints. All right, let's see what your contacts have to say. Maya hesitated. What? Marcus frowned. She glanced at Kira, then back at him. It's just we don't have to trust them completely. If something feels off, we leave. Marcus arched a brow. So you don't trust them? I trust them more than the Empire. That doesn't mean I trust them entirely. Marcus respected that. He had lived by the same rule for years: never put all your faith in someone else's safety net. Fair enough. Kira bounced slightly in her seat. Can we go outside now? Marcus ruffled her hair. Yeah, kid, we're safe. It felt good to say that. For the first time, it felt true. The air outside was warm. Marcus hadn't realized how much he had missed the scent of real earth, of living trees, instead of endless ice and metal corridors. The forest stretched around them, towering canopies blocking out the harshness of the sky, leaving only soft, dappled light. Kira took a deep breath, then laughed. Not a small, tired chuckle, a real laugh. The kind that meant something. Marcus exchanged a glance with Maya, who was watching her daughter with an expression so full of emotion it made Marcus's chest tighten. It suits her, he murmured. Maya looked at him. What? Being free? She didn't answer right away, just looked at him, something unreadable flickering in her dark eyes. Then quietly she said, It suits you too. Marcus felt something shift between them. Before he could respond, a movement in the trees caught his attention. A figure emerged, tall, dressed in patched armor, their weapons slung low but ready. More followed, stepping into the clearing with cautious but curious eyes. Maya stepped forward. We need safe harbor, she called out. One of the figures, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, studied her for a moment, then nodded. You'll have it. The tension in Marcus's chest finally unraveled. They had done it. They were safe. Days passed, then weeks. The outpost welcomed them, offering medical aid, food, a place to sleep that didn't come with the constant threat of death. For the first time in years, Marcus wasn't waking up in fight or flight mode. Kira had found other children to play with, her laughter echoing through the settlement. Maya had stopped looking over her shoulder. She still trained, still kept her weapons close, but Marcus could see the difference in her. She was lighter, and Marcus stayed. Not because he had nowhere else to go, but because he didn't want to be anywhere else. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the treetops, he found Maya sitting on the steps of one of the outpost buildings. Watching Kira chase fireflies, he sat beside her, stretching his legs out with a small groan. His wound had healed, but he still felt the ache, sometimes a reminder of everything they had been through. So, Maya murmured, What now? Marcus smirked. That's a dangerous question, and yet I'm asking it. Marcus thought for a moment. He watched Kira run through the grass, her dark hair catching the last rays of sunlight. We live, he said simply. Maya turned to him, really looking at him. Marcus wasn't the man she had met in the ice. He wasn't just a rogue, a survivor, a runaway soldier. And she wasn't just a fugitive anymore. They were more than that now. Her gaze flickered to his lips. You know, she murmured, we wouldn't have made it without you. Marcus tilted his head. You sure? You're pretty damn stubborn. You probably would have survived just to spite the Empire. Maya smirked. Maybe. A beat of silence. Then she leaned in. Marcus met her halfway. The kiss was slow, deliberate, not desperate like before, not driven by adrenaline or the need to feel something before it was too late. This was different. This was real. When they pulled apart, Maya let out a small, content sigh. Took you long enough, she teased. Marcus chuckled. Yeah, I like to build suspense. She nudged him with her shoulder, then stood. Come on, she said. Kira's going to want you to catch fireflies with her. Marcus raised a brow. You think I look like the firefly catching type? Maya smirked. No, but you look like the can't say no to Kira type. She wasn't wrong. With a sigh, Marcus pushed himself to his feet and followed her into the evening light. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't looking over his shoulder. He was home. The fireflies danced in the twilight, their soft golden light flickering around them. Marcus stood beside Maya, Kira's laughter ringing in his ears. And as he looked at them, at his family, he finally let himself believe it. They had made it.